feeling wanted. That clock is way off compared to my phone. I have to fix that.
Really?
I got 9:17 on here.
I have 9:20.
Oh, it just changed to 9:20.
It's fast.
9:20.
That's what I have.
Time flies.
God, yeah.
No, Bruce is out.
Bruce is up.
Oh,
Bruce is there. I've never.
I thought the other guy was here.
No, he's out there.
Jim Mason. He's from one of the.
Uh,
But they're usually here for the IBA meeting. He must have to leave.
We'll pull him up there and maybe Dave will push him up. Bob, should we push Bruce earlier in the agenda?
Yeah, well, he's right up on the top right now.
Oh, I love the hot seat. I live in the hot seat.
You can come right here on this end, we don't have anybody immersed here.
Does everyone know Bruce Wright from Guilfoyle Ambulance?
Hi,
I'm
how
not
are
sure
you?
that you guys
Down with
all
the
know him.
No, Don's here.
Oh, he's still here?
He's out there.
Oh, okay.
We have talked several months about the importance of this ambulance service to our community. Then became a possible issue related to his financing package, of which we were a part, along with the Watertown Trust. But also acknowledge Don, who has shown up here today, Don Rutherford from the Trust. So as the board knows, we work very closely with the Trust in financing these activities. So I asked Bruce to come up and talk a little bit about the ambulance service as a general rule, the impact in the community, and then perhaps what he is thinking in terms of his most recent request. So there you go.
The only thing, Bruce, we are in open session, so everything is public. If you've got anything personal, financial or anything like that, you know.
Sure. You guys want me to stand, sit?
Sit.
Okay. Thank you for having me. It's not often we get to really explain what we do on the ambulance side of things. Generally, when explaining what EMS, ambulance service, and what we do is, I use it as an out of sight, out of mind type of business, or some people look at us as taboo because they see an ambulance and they immediately think the worst, especially they're going lights and sirens racing through traffic. Where could they be going and stuff like that. And out of sight, out of mind is generally you don't think about the ambulance when you're waking up in the morning and everything's great and you're going to work, getting your coffee and stuff like that. You think about the ambulance when you start having chest pain or you see a car accident or somebody down on the street. So I appreciate the opportunity to kind of inform you guys of what we do. Guilfoyle Ambulance is touted as the oldest privately owned ambulance service in the entire country. Our records as far back as we can go are 1907. We even believe they're before that. It was started by undertaker named Dennis Guilfoyle, who had a funeral home and a florist on the 100 block of Stone Street in the city of Watertown. And he started transporting sick and injured people to, I believe it was the city hospital, which is now the House of Good Samaritan. He would change the horses, white for an ambulance, black for a funeral, so they were generally used as the same thing. As the century started coming into what we call the modern times, the 20s, the 30s, you start seeing motorized ambulances. But undertakers were usually still tasked with carrying EMS, and ambulance is what we know today. So going through the 60s and 70s, really it was paint color and lights and sirens were the different differentiations between hearses. That's hearses and ambulances were the same thing. They paint hearses white, put lights and sirens on it, and it was essentially the same vehicle. In the late 60s and early 70s, as Vietnam was ending, and the government recognized the need to get emergency care to people in the public from car accidents, from illnesses. Medics were coming home from Vietnam, and they were understanding that these people were saving lives before hospitals. So it really started the roots of what EMS is today. For Guilfoyle, my father came home from Vietnam as a Navy corpsman, which they served with the Marines, and his childhood dream was to run on the ambulance with Guilfoyle. He lived right down the street. When he was a kid, he'd sleep on their porch and wait for them to get an ambulance call and literally ride shotgun with them. So when he came back with his knowledge and skills from that the Navy had provided him, he bought stock into Guilfoyle, and he really started building it into what it is today. In 1993, my father passed away. My mother assumed it, and she ran it for 20 years, and that's when we really had our big successes. We profited off of a very nice contract with Fort Drum, which a lot of us knew that wasn't going to be permanent type of thing. Our job was to provide medical care and transport soldiers who were training to outside hospitals in case they became sick or injured. As our efforts in Afghanistan and Iraq started to scale back, these medics were coming home and they had to practice their skills, so the government cut us back. This is around the time that we had moved into our building, 1291 Fackney Drive, and the first year was great. We still had the Fort Drum contract, and that was injecting a lot of revenue into our company, enough where we were putting ambulances in underserved parts of the county, paramedic ambulances. And as that started scaling back and eventually went away, we had to really start right-sizing our corporation so we could maintain the services to our primary operating area. That's Watertown, Brownville, Rutland, parts of Pamelia, and any other area in the county that we serve. In that time, we moved back to Newell Street, and we figured that leasing our property at Fackney Drive would be the best bet to try to maintain a revenue stream up there to help pay the mortgages and the bills. Operationally for Guilfoyle, that was an excellent move for us just because of its location. We needed Fackney Drive because of the space when we were busting at the seams. Moving back to Newell Street, our company has maintained an employee count anywhere from 80 to 100 employees. Our fleet has been 7 to 10 ambulances, 3 paramedic fly cars, and 4 to 6 wheelchair vans. Currently, Guilfoyle has plus or minus 80 employees. We're currently on a big hiring push right now, just because of how much busier we're getting. Our annual call volume for ambulance it has jumped from around 7,700 calls a year to well over 9,000. And that jump is within the last 3 years. That's a significant increase, and there's nothing I can really attribute it to other than people needing ambulances. So that's basically what Guilfoyle has going on right now. In terms of what we are as a profession, that's a topic that's often debated. Are we street practitioners, meaning, or we've been called street cardiologists? Are we transportation? That's a topic that is being discussed federally under what EMS really is. Should we be put under the fire service branch? Should we be our own branch of service? In some places, police provide EMS. Or are we just completely a transportation element. Show up, grab the patient, get him to the hospital as quickly as we can. Someone like me, I've got a 4-year degree from Utica College. I have extensive EMS schooling. I like to be considered a practitioner. I think that some of the stuff that we do on the streets, we're genuinely making a difference in people's lives. And it's no secret that our society right now is in trouble. We have an opioid crisis, which there is no end in sight. We have rising healthcare needs from baby boomer generation. We have in this area a big chunk of our residents are living in poverty, and they're relying on EMS a lot as their access point to healthcare. So we're dealing with everything from hangnails to gunshots, stabbings, overdoses, heart attacks. A lot of people call ambulances because they don't know who else to call. So we're kind of dealing with a little bit of a society problem. EMS doesn't have a problem stepping up to that plate. Our problem is, on the other end, is reimbursement for our services. And as a lot of you have seen, we are going through a huge public dispute with our city fire department. And the cost of their service is extraordinary. It is a lot of the same thing in EMS and even police departments. And it's what a lot of people don't think about, but it's called the cost of preparedness. You have to absorb these costs to be ready to respond. And EMS and fire service, police service, they don't operate under normal circumstances that factories or places that look to increase productivity and generate revenue. We don't normally operate under those structures. You could go into work as a paramedic and you could run 20 calls in a 12-hour shift. Or you could go in and run 1 or 2 calls. There's just no way of predicting things. So revenue is often sought from insurance companies. And in our area, the biggest provider for insurance, Medicare, Medicaid. Medicare is federally paid. That's not as bad reimbursement as Medicaid is. With Medicare, we're only losing around 7 to 10% of our cost. With Medicaid, we're losing over 70. Over 70% of our cost. And that is run by New York State. We've had studies done. We've met with legislators just absolutely trying to push for a little bit of help, a little bit of extra revenue, just because the service that we provide is vital. Again, I hope nobody in here ever has to use our service, but we're there ready to respond to anything. And we are going to Syracuse anywhere from 3 to 12 times a day, taking patients back and forth. We're responding to homes, car accidents. We're out into the county helping out our volunteer counterparts a lot of the times during the daytime because they have to maintain jobs.
So I'm sorry. The police department and fire departments are they may be treating some people at the scene, but most of the time you're always there to follow up, to do transport, which begs the other question. On a lot of these calls you're doing, it actually results in not transporting people. Say you get a call for a hangnail that's bleeding.
Sure.
In one of these poverty-stricken families,
Mm-hmm.
and you respond. I mean, that's channeled through 911, right?
Correct.
All your calls are pretty well channeled through 911.
Mhm.
So you're being dispersed from 911 to this incident.
Right.
How many of those calls do you just go and treat somebody on site and never transport? A
Right.
lot.
I'd probably say that's anywhere from 10 to 20 to 25% of our call volume are, we call them treat and releases. A lot of people call just to make sure, and we can do everything from running an EKG in their home to checking their vital signs.
So
We-
is there a lot of liability issue with that?
Well, it's huge liability.
When you say, listen, we don't think you need to go to the ER?
Sure. And there's quite a bit of signing and discussing with our patients that, hey, look, you called an ambulance for a reason. If you have a general concern, be seen by a doctor and let the doctor clear it up. We never used to seek recovery revenue-wise from that until we started in March. It was at the discretion of our billing company that we tried to bill insurances, a small fee for this, because we are there. In some cases, we are tying ambulances up for an hour, either talking some of these patients into going or examining them, getting a hold of family members, just to make sure they're in capable hands if something else does happen. But under those circumstances, they generally have to sign quite a few waiver forms that they understand that they called an ambulance, but they're refusing care, they're refusing a ride to a medical facility, and that they understand their condition could get much worse. It could result in everything to worsening of their condition to death.
Bruce, is the engaging the billing services company really improved the cash flow?
Yes, it has. That was a move we made in December. Our billing manager had retired, so we engaged a third-party professional billing company, and they have been a good move for us. So
So they discuss with the insurance companies and try to settle any disputes and claims and all that. They kind of take over for what you would do internally if there's an issue with insurance.
correct.
Yeah.
Yep. So
Is that normal?
So I guess probably the reason you're here is you've got a building out there that, we've got loans on, and Don was the lead on and like that. Talk to us a little bit about the building and, where
Sure.
you'd like to head,
well, that building it's a wonderful place, it really is. And if you've never visited it, I certainly encourage you to contact me, and I'd love to give you a tour. It's a 77,000 square foot facility that sits on about 13 acres of land, with quick access to 81. It's nicely placed in a very popular area of our city of Watertown. It's really being developed and improved, and it's a chunk of land like this in the city of Watertown is not easy to come by. For me personally, I would love to keep the building. I would love to move the ambulance company back into there someday. That would be a sign of just how well our ambulance company is doing. I unfortunately don't see that happening. So we've listed the building for lease or sale. It's listed for sale for $1.3 million, but we are actively seeking leases just to help us with the costs. Currently have 4 or 5 leases in the building. It's not covering our costs, but we're getting interest every day on it. Our realtors contacting us for showings. I get contacted by CoStar LoopNet all the time for space in the building. We're usually meeting with 1 to 2 people every few weeks that they're interested in what the building has to offer. So
So Bruce, the way we left it, I think a couple of months ago, we discussed restructuring the debt, whereby we would restructure it and reduce the interest rate to 0 the first year and amortize it so that you were paying down the principal rather than just, doing the interest only thing. So one of the caveats on that was to engage a commercial real estate appraiser. And, no knock against the appraiser that you're currently using. The board felt, and I believe the
Broker,
idea-
actually.
Broker, yeah. Our board felt, as well as I think the IDA, that you needed a wider reach, nationwide, even international reach. And I know you've had some concerns with that because you've commented to me several times that you see these buildings being brokered by these large commercial real estate firms that aren't moving.
Right.
So I guess my question is, I'm assuming that's something that you really don't want to do, because we haven't really gotten anything back as far as what your plan was for that.
Right.
Is there an opportunity to co-broker the property?
So my
I mean,
agreement.
I don't know
yep.
when your contract with your current broker is up, but I was wondering if that was a possibility.
Everything's a possibility right now. That for me is, personally, it's a difficult decision. And again, this is just the way I feel personally, that it's not fair to my current broker. They are getting people into the building to look at it. I am getting solicitations, if you will, people interested in the property, whether lease or curiosity or sale. My agreement with them is up in November, and I was kind of just using the time from our last communications to November to really think and sit on that decision. I'm not opposed to that. I'm not opposed to taking your deal. And I'm not opposed to saying no to your deal either. I'm just still trying to figure it out. Yeah.
I'm Rob.
Hi, Rob.
I think from past correspondence, I don't have it all here, you did receive one offer, but it was quite a low ball, as I recall.
No, I never received anything in paper.
Interest, okay. I don't have all the paperwork on this, so
Sure.
I was trying to do some things from memory.
Sure.
Yeah, so you're saying 1.3 is your asking price at this point?
So 1.3 is not giving us any profit. We've incurred quite a bit of debt with this building, both personally and with Guilfoyle. This wouldn't even cover the debt that my family's personally lent to having to cover expenses from this and for Guilfoyle. What this is basically gonna get is Community Bank, who's the primary lender, their money, and get this group their money. Yep. That's important to me because you guys believed in what our original dream was, and I'm not saying that if I got a low ball, that's okay, well, here's the money, we get what we get. I have every intention on paying back, but that's just gonna make life a lot easier for Guilfoyle if I can get what we're asking for. And I don't think that it's unreasonable right now with the capital improvements that we've put into the building and what the property really is.
Yeah, I mean, our primary concern is that the bank is held at bay, and you continue to work with the bank to make sure that you're keeping them current, the taxes on the property are current. From a long-term perspective, as long as the bank doesn't take any type of action on the building, I think our agencies are kind of set up to work with you. We're not like a bank, we have shareholders, we're economic development firms. So, from that perspective, we do have, some time. I think what we do need, however, is kind of a plan from you, just so that we can bring it, Don and I can bring it to our respective boards, to kind of outline what kind of time frame are you because I think there has to be kind of a long-term plan, there has to be kind of an end point, because one of the things I don't want to see happen is, you know, either you personally or Guilfoyle or whatever subsidizing this building to the point where you can't do it.
Right.
So that's my primary concern. It's not as much, we need to get this current right now. We will work with you on doing that. But I think our board would feel a lot more comfortable, and I think this board as well, if there was a plan stating, you know, this is the time frame I'm doing it. And then from a cash flow perspective, to keep the bank current, get us some type of interest payments or review the other deal, those payments. This is how long I can sustain that.
It's tough to answer because, speaking on behalf of Guilfoyle, it's, our revenue is very unpredictable. We are held at the mercy of government entities for reimbursement, and we are held at the mercy of very powerful private insurance companies that at any moment can make an attempt to freeze your cash flow up. So it's, we've had to battle that way a couple of times where one of the government payers just held money up. And we didn't have any good reason why, but we had to seek support from Senator Schumer, who his office works pretty hard for what EMS is. He's been a champion of us on the federal level in the Senate, so he's.
A couple of fine points, Bruce. You had mentioned geographic areas that are served. Do you have contracts with those, and if so, how long are those contracts in place?
So we have two monetary contracts with local towns. They're usually on a year-to-year basis. Those towns do not have their own ambulances, and those towns, what they're paying, do not cover our costs. Usually we're making that difference up with billing insurances. And with those agreements, the residents of those towns do not get a bill from us. In New York State, nothing obligates a town to have a contract agreement with an ambulance. For instance, City of Watertown, it's where we're geographically located. We've always been in Watertown. We've always been happy to serve Watertown, but we have not had a monetary agreement with the City of Watertown for ambulance service in over 40 years. And it is what it is.
Is that unusual in the ambulance business?
No, it's not unusual, and the old joke with ambulances and EMS is, if you've seen one EMS system, you've seen one EMS system. They're incredibly different from town to town, city to city, to company, even from paramedic to paramedic, just the way they learn. There are a million different ways places do it. There are towns that pay to have minimum ambulance coverage. There are other towns that say we're not going to pay anything. So there's no consistency in seeking contractual revenue from towns because they're not obligated to provide it.
So does that mean that any privately owned ambulance company could come into town and compete?
No, the Department of Health has laws in place to clearly define operating territory for ambulances. If they didn't, it would be the wild, wild west. It would be two ambulances racing to one patient to see who gets there faster, and you'd have ambulance companies slashing tires of other ambulances. I mean,
Good protected areas.
Correct.
Not monetarily
It's really
reimbursed.
personally
You just guarantee whatever work is generated in those areas.
correct. And
Then
you
the
have to.
bureaucracy takes over to collect whatever the revenue is.
Sure. Well, there's The areas are clearly defined and you have to prove need. And Guilfoyle answers, we answered over 99.9% of our calls. It's often when we are very busy that we rely on ambulance companies like the town of Watertown or Black River Ambulance to come in and take a patient, which I'm not gonna say it doesn't happen because it does happen, but that's just because we're incredibly busy. Our ambulances are out
Yeah.
caring for patients.
One thing you mentioned, with a lot of the towns within our county, is there any active engagement? I mean, I know it costs a lot for towns and volunteer departments to run ambulances. Is there any active engagement to sort of make a better deal for the citizens of town X or town Y that you can provide the services and they can just retire their ambulance and do local call? I mean, I hate to, I
Sure.
don't, I'm kind of asking a nebulous question, but
Sure.
hopefully it makes sense to you. Is that an opportunity that you either have engaged and it's a dead end, or
So
you haven't
there-
really explored it?
There are some towns around the city of Watertown that I will see their budget seasons coming up, and I'll actively solicit them. They usually go unanswered, but I've gone in front of town boards and village boards to answer questions about
Okay.
what Guilfoyle does, and fortunately, they don't act upon it, which that's fine. I mean, I actually have an operating certificate for all of Jefferson County. So if I really wanted to, I could park an ambulance in their driveway. There's nothing New York State or anybody could do. That's not good business because we rely on some of those volunteer ambulance companies in those outlying areas to provide care. It behooves us to have a strong EMS system with our counterparts out in the county, so.
Bruce, this agency, Don's agency, has had a long-standing relationship with you guys, and I think we demonstrated in the past our willingness to try to work with you, as Don described. Over that time, like all medical reimbursement areas, you guys have struggled with reimbursements, up, down, back. How does your accounts receivable look these days? Is that more manageable now since the new company is in place, or not?
Yes, we're in a better position than we were. So,
That should help you financially moving forward.
yes.
Familiar with tiers. Is there a level playing field out there? I mean, I look at tiers, you know, they've raised over $1 million to build their facility, all from private funds, and
Sure.
they're contracting with the towns, going through the insurance reimbursement. Is your services compared to them, is there a level playing field? Is that
In terms of,
providing services and recouping costs, are they in a better position because of the way they're structured versus your private structure to?
well, Tiers is a not-for-profit. They're able to accept donations. They're able to apply for grants and usually be awarded grants for vehicles, equipment, training.
You're locked out of that?
I am pretty much locked out of it. And the answer we get in terms of grants are, we're sorry, but all the grant money's dried up by the time it starts coming around to private for-profit ambulance companies. We're not allowed to take donations because we are a private proprietary business. So everything that we earn is ours. So that
But
is.
are they serving areas that you probably wouldn't be serving anyway, so it's not really competition?
No, there are a couple areas that I don't want to say we split, but we work together to make sure that nobody's going without an ambulance. And geographically, I mean, they're up in the River District. We're down here in the city of Watertown. Even for them, in some of the places that they have to respond to mutual aid, we're looking at 20-25 minutes to some of these points or islands that they may have to respond to, and it's no different for us. So
Thanks for coming in, Bruce. Any other questions with regards to our, basically our loan and our building?
Well, I think only as a follow-up to what Don asked, I mean, we have to deal in numbers, and thank you so much for the update on the Guilfoyle part of the business. We are talking about the loan part of the business, and it is hard to just separate it, and
Sure.
unfortunately, that's what kind of where the numbers are. Is there any way to come up with some sort of projection to what Don indicated, even a worst case? I know you have an unbalanced revenue stream, but at some point, I think, as Don asked, there needs to be, some numbers put forward. Here's the plan. 6 months is gonna be right, year and a half is gonna be right, I'm gonna sell the property. I mean,
Well,
it's
if I could,
prediction.
I mean,
It's a prediction. It
sure.
doesn't mean it's gonna come to fruition, but, I mean, right now, we just, when we keep bringing these resolutions up, I'll put words in my colleagues' mouth, we don't wanna have to talk about this every 6 months. A resolution, a resolution, a resolution, it just gets in the newspaper and infuriates things in the sense that, what's going on, let's just deal with this once to your satisfaction and for the benefit of the whole community. And that's kind of what I'm putting words in our respective agencies' mouths, but we wanna make things right with your organization, and also treat the taxpayers that loan the money fairly as well.
Right, right, and that is a sentiment that I have the same feelings on. I really do. I don't know. I don't want to make a prediction or give you a plan and see the bottom fall out of it. I'm not saying that's what's gonna happen. It's just is what it is. So I think in the interim, my plan is to continue to try to provide or pay my expenses with the mortgages and the utilities and taxes with a little help from Guilfoyle and whatever we can get out of Fackney Drive in terms of leases and events like weddings, meetings,
Are you
leases.
resigning to the fact that you have to sell the building?
I'm sorry, what?
Are you resigning to the fact that Faculty Drive has to be sold?
No.
I guess my concern is we were looking at a loan that came with a contingency that hasn't been met, that you listed with a commercial real estate broker. And I think that's one of the reasons we're here is that your agency voted first, we agreed to it, and then the contingencies haven't been met. So in November, do you intend to list it with a commercial real estate broker? Because that's what's holding up us modifying our agreements.
Yeah, that's right. No, that's right.
I don't have an answer for you on that. I haven't decided that. Plain and simple.
Okay.
That's fair enough.
That is a fair answer.
Honestly, fair. Can't dispute it. It's your opinion.
So in the interim, I'm gonna continue to keep trying to pay down the balances, and as far as I'm concerned right now, I owe the principal and interest to the each group.
So that's fair.
So
At the 1.3 million, what's the appraised value compared to that 1.3?
it has gone up and down and all over the place. We've seen
Well, from a low to a high.
low to a high, 1.4 to 1.8.
So even at your low appraisal, you're somewhat below the lowest appraisal to sell at.
Yes.
It's finding the right type of business. It's such a big building. It was built for manufacturing. Obviously, new manufacturing is very difficult right now. There are some things going for it. It's right on 81. Maybe large warehousing.
Space.
Just for the
Space is
record,
what we
both-
specialize in.
Both Don and I, the trust and this agency have attempted in many ways to help Bruce market this facility. It's not like we're asking him to do this completely on his own. If someone is looking for a facility, if it happens to come close to matching that 77,000 square feet that's sitting down there, we reach out to Bruce, as I think he would agree, and try to help him
Do we have current information on that, Marshall?
Not current.
Bruce, if you can get us, we had information back before you bought it, but if you have some current information, you can get it to Marshall. We list properties, you know, for those kind of purposes on our own website too.
Oh.
It's just another vehicle someone's calling, so if we have that handy,
Great,
you know.
okay. I will see what I can dig up.
There's been a couple, I think we've had 2 inquiries probably over the last 6 months that I sort of directed to that facility. So, I mean, while we didn't have I knew it was there, and, you know, the approximate size and things like that.
Sure.
Did you fix wasn't there a leaky roof? Is that fixed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
I'm talking about one thing. This issue came to us after your board had already adopted their, I think we talked about in the future trying to get together with the boards so that if we have concerns, you know, your primary, that we're all on the same page at the same time. Does that make sense?
We, the 2 boards of the agencies get together. Yeah.
Understand at the beginning, because I just don't I'm going to be candid with you. You know, you put something out there with a contingency that I'm surprised how hard it is to just find another broker. To help.
I don't know.
It seems there's an emotional attachment to it.
Yeah.
And I can understand that.
It's not as difficult, it's easy to do, but he's got some person.
Well, but isn't that cord gonna get severed? I mean, you can't keep pushing this cart down the road. That's interest-free, loan payment-free.
I think we're already on principal only because we already passed that resolution.
Right,
if I'm not
right,
mistaken.
with the bank.
We were reverting to interest only, which never passed.
No, the other way around.
No.
Was it the other way around?
It was, we had a structure whereby, because we wanted to see the principal start to pay down, you know, just get that principal down, we did the way it was structured was 0% year 1, 1% year 2, 2% year 3, 3% 4, 4% year 5. So it was a gradual increase in interest, and the payment was slightly more than what interest only on the total debt would be. So it was bringing down the interest, we forego interest the first year, but then you graduated up. You know, that's, my concern is that we just are kicking this can down the road, and been doing so for the last couple of years, and not much has really changed. Obviously, it's very important for the bank to keep the bank happy, and I'm in constant communication with Community Bank on, you know, where they stand with them. The last thing we want to see is that happen.
And the bank is gonna allow the can to get kicked down the road for using your words
Well,
for a
as
short
long-
while.
You know,
There is some
they're
question about
holding
that.
steady as long as the payments are kept current and the taxes are paid in a reasonable amount.
As long as some easy companies are not.
Pretty much, I mean,
It's gonna be.
and they understand the relationship, you know, they understand the public relations aspect of this as well. But it's a tough situation, I mean.
You know, what, that building, that site has a tremendous amount of assets. It's just finding the right participant. You know, small distribution versus manufacturing. You know, I think of what FedEx met over in the park to build their facility. You know, that's the kind of repurpose, you know, and with a connection to the Canadian border, you know, that it's at 1.3 million, you know, it's easily worth probably twice that if you were to try and duplicate it. So it's maybe everybody just needs to get together, put their resources in a pot and get the thing sold.
Well, that was my question. He's not resigning the fact that he wants to sell it yet.
Well,
You know, I know you say it's easy access. I mean, I've been to a business up there a bunch of times. I don't find that. You know, that's not a conducive access.
To even make it remotely not Coffee, whatever the heck that street is.
It's
Used to be a
Gaffney
traffic-
Drive, Gaffney.
Yeah, well, I get all those.
Especially if
But
there's
Coffee
some
Network comes out
large
yeah.
vehicles, tractor trailers.
Well, Face need a Gaffney.
Hopefully, the rebuilding of that street through.
Yeah, where is that gonna go in relation to building the new street?
I think they're just
I think it's
rebuilding.
Gaffney
through-
Drive is being improved too.
Yeah,
It's
so
just.
hopefully that
Yeah.
helps with the access. Instead of driving through the parking lot of the former
Maybe
phase.
somebody can
right,
sell tractors
you're driving
there. You know anybody who sells tractors?
It's a wonderful, for 1.3 million, it's a wonderful facility, it's just gonna connect it.
Watertown Cheese Company. I'm gonna market it to you. Get you.
Yeah, we should go take a look at that, see, I mean, I haven't been there since before, I'd be interested to see what they've done to it.
Never been in there.
You wanna go back to the loan?
Yeah, let's kind of move on. Hey, thanks, Don, thanks for coming over too.
I do not have any more time today.
Thank you, sir.
Main Street Crafts.
Well, am I free to
Main-
go back to
Main
number
Street
4
Crafts?
or 6 or whatever the hell we were, 6,
Crafts and
committee
drafts.
reports? Okay, so the loan review committee, yeah, we had our meeting, we had 2 applicants, and then we talked about a couple other things that are all listed out through here, and there was the bad debt resolution was added in late, so I had made that note. The committee report is very brief and is very articulate about what the projects are. Although the word strong is not there, there's definitely strong approval to make a recommendation from our committee and the board attendees for the 2 projects that are looking to receive benefits on Long Falls and Main Street Crafts and Drafts. I'll let them speak for themselves and we get into those resolutions, and then I'll hand that back over to Dave.
And Sackett's Harbor LDC approved the
Okay, very
Main
good.
Street yesterday.
Yes, we were
Okay.
a co-participant
Yeah.
on that one. And then we also discussed at length, really our hands are tied with regards to writing off the debt for Big Brothers and Carthage Specialty Paper with regard to each of those particular projects. We added on the bad debt discussion that Lyle felt even though it's in the budget, there was a discussion that he felt much better from the standpoint of a state auditing, that we bring it up again and reapprove it, for lack of a better description. And then the last thing was something about Blue Island with regards to a potential response that we discussed. That's the committee report and highlight, and I'll let you sort of take it back over, Dave, and kind of go through the
Beautiful.
resolutions, unless somebody has questions.
We'll move right along.
Okay.
Becoming a late meeting today. Resolution 0906, 2018-01, it's a resolution for authorizing a microenterprise loan to Main Street Crafts and Drafts.
Yes, I'll move the resolution.
So we have a motion, do we have a second?
it.
It's a motion to loan $7,150. Questions on the resolution or project? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution carries. Let me get down to the actual resolution here. Oop. We had quite a discussion with the gentleman from Long Falls Paperboard, and so we have resolution 0906, 2018-02. It's a resolution for authorizing a revolving loan to Long Falls Paperboard. Long Falls Paperboard has requested a revolving loan in the amount of $300,000 to purchase and run the Carthage mill, subsequent to becoming the owner of it after Chapter 11.
And this is, the loan only happens if they become the owner.
Yes.
Well, and also the participation of the other agencies as well. Yeah.
I was just trying to clarify that for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think to highlight, this was a slightly larger amount than normally allowed, but the size of the project
Yeah.
predicated that
It's a
the
contingency in the
extra 50,000
resolution.
was more than
Yeah, that's what we
adequate
want to
with
change.
regards
Do we want to change
that's
that
what we-
contingent? I mean, if they don't, if the other agencies don't come through,
Mr. Chairman, I move
and they
this
want to go ahead,
resolution.
do we want to have them take
Hold on, we
that?
have discussion down here.
So I have a motion and a second.
To discuss.
I,
This is bridge
whatever
financing.
the board,
That is correct.
yeah.
Yes,
Solid.
yeah. Dave?
So I was gonna ask, so certainly contingent on them owning when it comes out of bankruptcy, if the other agencies haven't reviewed it yet, do we still want to, if they can find it, if the other agencies don't fund it, they can find another way to finance it, do we still want to go ahead with our portion of the loan, my question? Do we want to have that contingency in our, just raising the question now.
That wasn't in the resolution.
It's in the resolution.
It's in the resolution now?
Yes.
So if we want to leave it in, or not? Your
It-
prerogative.
It's what we do ordinarily,
It is
but
what we normally do.
nothing required.
I mean, if it doesn't,
Some-
we all get to come back.
Well, looking at, after our discussion with Rankin yesterday, or was it the day before? They could probably do it without the other 700,000. But
We all, should we just leave it like it is and come back if we need to, or?
I would like to leave it like it
You're-
is.
you're
You're gonna have
Yeah,
time, because it's
yeah.
not gonna come out of bankruptcy
Right,
in the
right,
next
right,
month,
right,
so.
yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Right. So we're looking at including the other agencies.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Other questions or discussion? On the resolution, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
Who
Resolution
seconded?
carries.
Yeah.
Bill.
I have Resolution 0906, 2018-03. It's a resolution for authorizing a write-off of microenterprise loan fund to Bick Brothers of Northern New York LLC, Jake's Wayback Burgers, in the balance due of $20,453.25. We will also continue to pursue all legal actions and collection efforts.
We've been granted a judgment on this, and that's all we've had so far.
Okay.
I motion to move to accept the resolution as presented.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution carries. Resolution number 0906, 2018-04. And this is a resolution to authorizing a write-off of the revolving loan fund to Carthage Specialty Paperboard. Whereas staff recommend approval of write-off of this account. That
They
is
have my name attached to it, but I'll move it because it's time to do it.
It's time to do it, you're right.
Time to get rid of it.
The balance due $196,119.95. Did I have a second?
That'll be the headline.
On the resolution, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Not that I want to, but. Then we have Resolution 0906, 2018-05. It's approving a reserve of bad debt allowances for 2018, 2019. Whereas Lyle Eaton,
There you go, Lyle.
CFO, recommended $210,000 for RLF and $22,000 for the micro. I take a motion and a second on this one, this resolution. This has been in the budget, but Lyle just wants to formalize this with a resolution.
Conformance with the budget.
On the resolution, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution carries. So we have Rob, you brought up a request at the
Yeah.
loan review, and I'll let you
briefly,
follow up with that.
It's kind of in the loan review committee discussion, there was this interrogatory document that's in our packet. There was a very, very brief response that we had discussed, and it was really just to put any perception from what was presented to the PSC relative to the actions or status of where we sit as a board. And we briefly discussed, it was agreed by our small committee that we're only stating fact. I think staff reflected that we're in the early stages and we should more or less stay as such. It's more about just putting a brief response out there. I'm not sure these are necessary to respond to. I don't know much about these interrogatories, other than there appeared, as I read this, that it kind of put our agency at a status that there was a lot more going on than maybe it appeared relative to our board or to staff, and we wanted to just restate the facts. So.
Your summary's on page 36.
Yeah, I don't have it yet. So I just put together a very extremely brief, apolitical, as ambivalent as possible statement, just to restate where the facts were. And the only discussion we had at our loan review committee hearing was, we had discussed that our chairman of the board would sign it versus staff in this particular instance, just as so the agency would speak through the board. So that was put out there for discussion. Need it, modify it, who signs it, throw it away, remodify it, or redo it, etc. Bring it back over, that's the backstory.
Discussion.
Well, I'll start. I mean, this is all because of answers that Apex provided to the citing board. And in it, and it's included in the packet, he writes, the applicant believes that the tax burden determined by the proper assessed value of the turbines will be commensurate with the anticipated historic norms for pilot payments for existing wind projects. You know, for a couple months I've been, Don has put out what the average pilot payments are, but we've never looked at what the historic assessments are. So I put together, and I sent them all out to you, a list of 12 projects and what they're assessed at. In today's response, he talks of nobody puts any effort basically into creating the assessments. But their idea of $7,500, they're spending $1.5 million per megawatt to build this facility, excluding the transmission. And a $7,500 pilot payment is equal to a $365,000 assessment, or less than my house, that they want to pay in taxes. So, who would lend anybody money for a project that's going to cost, that has a value at 25% what the cost is the day they turn it on? And I think as we talked about, we're in the early stages, that I don't see how we can even come close to projecting his idea of what a fair assessed value is. Do you know what all their grant sources are? NIPA funding, if they get it, they get a host community benefit, power purchase agreement, all those things. But, I mean, they're right back to the same stuff they've been saying all along, that, they want to be commensurate with what other pilots are paying. And in today's email, he says that nobody's paying taxes off the assessments, and that's not true. Every one of these projects, that what they're assessed at, they're paying the special, the fire district taxes, consolidated health district taxes, library taxes, are all paid off what the assessments are. So to say that the assessors are not putting values on, the market value on it, is just totally incorrect. And one last thing is I learned a few days ago is that Maple Ridge is challenging the assessments. They filed grievances on
Well,
this.
they have, but that was just to protect our right to do so. The negotiations are pretty close to being done.
Okay.
So, yeah. And they've also agreed that all the taxing jurisdictions have until the end of the year to respond.
Okay.
So they're just buying time.
So they filed the grievances, but and they're close to settling at current values.
I don't know what the settlement figures are right now at the top of my head, so I know there was some compromise both ways.
So it's gonna be less than, those assessed values are gonna come down even more.
They're gonna come down some, I'm not sure what the figures are.
So waiting until those numbers come out make sense for us to determine, because this will probably be the first assessment challenge and court decision.
My guess is that that settlement will probably be finalized within the next couple of weeks, so.
But yet it's almost, how many years has that been now? 15?
No, it's
2012.
Yeah, it's like-
But, you know, everything I sent out shows that even if you kick out the high and the low, I'm lower than the numbers that were in Mr. Gray's letter a little bit. You know, at $1 million a megawatt, where Maple Ridge is at like 1.6. And he references the oldest project in the state in Madison County in the 400s, which is a correct assessment. You know, that puts just this becomes more complex because of the county's position for full taxation. So you have to look at what an assessment's going to generate for full taxation in the county, and where do the school and town want to fall in to full taxation or a portion thereof,
Well,
to see where it comes.
it's, the one way you offset 100% evaluation, of course, is to drive the appraised value down. That's the same as having a higher appraised value and then a 50% pilot affecting that. So I think they're going into a position that they're probably gonna have to satisfy the county's 100%.
I don't disagree with anything we're saying here. The only disagreement I have with the whole line of discussion is the intention of this letter was really just to respond as briefly as possible to some statements that were made.
Oh,
And I don't want to kill any discussion, please. I just,
Well, we'll get back to that.
the
I have no
letter, I
problem
mean,
with what they put
we could
together.
discuss this crap all day long. And that wasn't the intention.
And I think ultimately, when you, and maybe I'm totally wrong, but I believe it's the town assessor is the one that actually finalizes an assessment roll. Is that, I'm correct then?
That would be correct.
Okay.
And at some point, and
Well, I mean, they normally work with the county and like that, but it's,
well, the state's there to
Yeah.
help too. And their state has done some appraisals in the past that are over $1 million a megawatt for older
Yeah.
projects too. And there was one done on Maple Ridge when it first came in. So,
I think we're a long
To
ways,
your point,
I think we're a long ways away from coming up with numbers. and-
Exactly. To your
So,
point is, all
I
I'm
don't-
saying is the applicant is stating with almost certainty, in fact, they use the term a remote possibility or, you know, that something won't happen. I mean, they're inferring that there's a lot of certainty with regards to numbers and durations, and that's the only thing that I actually
Yep.
personally took direct opposition to and felt that our agency hadn't gotten there. You know, there's a 30-year payment mentioned. We clearly didn't talk about 30 years.
are you putting this together as a motion?
Well, this was put together as a letter that I would present as a motion as presented, if nobody had any improvements. And again, they were my own words, and clearly I tried to
Can
be
I-
as non-controversial as possible.
Well, with the caveat, I would ask that our council review your letter and then if such, you know, if you want the chairman to sign it, I'll sign it. But I just soon have council.
Do I need to read this as the motion, or just say the motion is to accept the draft letter?
The draft letter
presented,
and-
provided council agrees with the language and chairman can sign.
That's fine.
Now, the only thing I don't know is who you send it to and how. That's kind of like, I think, a procedural thing,
Okay.
but I just kind of like just said Secretary Burgess, I don't know how this actually gets responded to, frankly. That might be something we would figure out.
Jeff can follow that up.
So I would make a motion, if there was no improvements offered, to accept the letter as written, draft letter as written, provided council has no improvements or
It
changes.
looks fine to me.
Okay. And that our chairman of the JCIDA board signs and sends to the proper person.
Signing.
Proper person.
Proper citing board.
I selected Secretary Burgess, I think that's where it goes.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion on the motion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. To be continued. Don, Lyle, you want to talk to us about the ABO audit?
Don had first contact, and it appears that they're coming in to do an audit of our ST60s. Now, that's the form we issue for sales tax exemption on projects. And conversely, the project operator, we make them an agent for purposes of being exempt from sales tax and possibly mortgage recording tax. The agent gives his subs a exemption. At the end of the year, the agent operator, whoever the operator of the project is required to submit a Form 340 to the state. And I think what we're going to run into is the fact that the state expects us to also receive a copy of that Form 340 so we can track how much sales tax exemption they received during a year. We do not get a copy of that 340. In fact, there's no place we can find that we were ever required to. But I think this is what the issue is going to be. I've been in contact with the lady that's going to be in charge of the audit, explained our procedures to her. She understands them, she's indicated, and indicated that we'll discuss them when she comes in. They're looking at, what is it, like 5 projects?
Yeah.
They're looking
Four or
at
five.
4 or 5 projects. So, we have documentation on everything. I'm sure we haven't done everything right, because when they do an audit, you never do. But to the best of our knowledge and all the information we have, we're following procedure.
So this 340 form,
Yes.
we're not required, it's not in the law for them to file with us. Is that something then we should have to modify our
Well,
agreements, require it?
Well,
find out.
we have done that since,
We've
already done that.
Okay.
Yeah, we can't find where it's required anyplace. However, we did make the change, so when we request our annual information from the projects, we're requesting a copy of the Form
So we
340.
So if they find the fault, we've already, before the audit, taken corrective action.
Yes.
Yeah, this came as a recommendation as part of the improvement of how IDAs handle their business as a result of the statewide activities. So the 340 will be included in what we do going forward, but there's no, as near as we can tell, no law that required that it be refiled with us, providing the information. But I can tell you, the auditor told me that this is part of an increasing amount of scrutiny being placed on particularly sales tax forgiveness by the Comptroller's Office and ABO. So we're going to face this
Well,
as...
they certainly, they can't call their fellow state agency and say, so what was the report file? Because it goes to the comptroller.
Well, I suspect a lot of these people are not filing a Form 340, and I think that may be a problem.
There was some issue a year or so ago where many of the, not many, some of the IDs were not even collecting SD60s. There was, that whole aspect had not correctly surfaced in the eyes of some. So, but I suspect we'll be criticized no matter what.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. Now, when we issue the ST60 when we make a project our agent, on the Form ST60, we have to calculate what's identified as the benefited amount for sales tax exemption. A construction project, 40% of it would be the benefited amount for sales tax exemption, the other 60% being labor. We have to report that on the form, and that's what we've been reporting. And that's reported to the ABO on an annual basis when we do the annual report.
But they're not getting the actual. So the 340.
We're not getting the
340 will give
actual,
the actual-
and they're not
the
getting the
amount.
actual.
They want to close the loop is what they're...
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem
Makes
with it. In
sense,
fact,
yeah.
it's something we should have.
Makes sense. Okay.
I agree with Don, though. One of the benefits of agriculture is the always had was sales tax exemption. And, you know, most of the purchases I do in Watertown, you know, it's all another 7% off, you know, it's substantial gain. Well, I can tell you, there are people making their careers in state government right now, recouping sales tax revenues. And it's, the bulldog is kind of out of the kennel.
Try dealing with all 50 states in the country.
Yeah.
If we don't have an auditor in our office every week trying to find a nickel for the state of Connecticut or the state of, it's like, and then you got workers' comp auditing you, you got states, you got like multiple agencies.
Corporate compliance.
Yeah, well, it's not compliance, it's states trying to get extra budget money wherever they can.
New business.
Okay, one thing, just on
Oh,
this
sorry.
report, that the county did pass the parking lease agreement for the various parking, the other night, meetings.
Beautiful.
We're working now, trying to set up a meeting with the city to get them moving, and we've got documents, I think we're almost in final form. For that
Nice.
agreement, so.
Hopefully we can get the city on board and get that done.
Dave, I had 3 questions, and they're actually all yes or no, so they should take about
Oh,
30
but
seconds.
they're unfinished, right, go ahead.
Unfinished, correct, that were in the minutes.
Yes, I'm sorry.
RC spot, was the equipment moved or not, yes or no?
That has been moved.
So we have to take an action.
I believe we should have our attorney,
Okay, so we should
Right.
either put that back to the loan review or whatever.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well,
No, I don't think we should wait for another month. If they've
Okay,
moved it, I think we should.
Whatever, I mean, I don't know where it has to go, you can determine.
I think, yeah,
that's a $200,000 Google, isn't it? I mean, that's gonna call, that puts us in a position to call.
Well, I think the balance on that one's about
Yeah, it's
29,000.
Yeah, it's not very big.
It's not very big,
It's
is it?
not very
Yeah.
big, but it's just,
Yeah.
there was a question in there. Convergys, the agreement expires at the end of the month.
Yes.
We are going to reach, or have reached an agreement.
But-
Yes or
We're
no?
close.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had some final edits,
Maybe.
Joe's got
Okay,
it.
good enough. I don't want to
City.
have discussion about these, it's more about
We're
the
close.
unopened answers.
It'll be done by the time,
Perfect.
yeah.
Re-energy.
I'm more worried about the city than I am us.
Re-energy, backstop pilot is not required anymore. Yes or no?
Well,
Good answer too.
we're debating that at the moment. Right now, it's up to the town to make that
So another
determination. The company has agreed that a stipulated settlement from the court would be sufficient for them to, because that is essentially a three-year plus a little bit.
Yeah, it really makes it 4 years by the time.
Okay.
Yeah, they're willing to stand by that,
Oh,
so
fine.
the agreement may not be
I
necessary.
don't know, we're looking for yes, no, or maybe.
Yeah.
I should have thrown maybe in there.
Yeah.
I was trying to move things
Well,
along.
maybe.
I just have one question of council, Mr. Chairman.
sure.
We had asked for an opinion on whether that section of the municipal law that requires the IDA to ensure that a project seeking benefits complies with local.
I owe you an opinion on that, yes. And I have a note on my desk that to do that, so.
Those are my 3 questions.
They were quick.
They could have been.
New business then. Nothing for new business? Okay. Anything else from the board?
Not for this board. I move to adjourn.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Yes.
All in favor, aye? Opposed? We stand adjourned.
We don't meet on